Hi, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio. Jeanne White is the producer, writes the blog, and I highly suggest you read the blog because there's going to be information on how you can contact the guest and where to buy the books. Before I bring my guest on, I just want to say you're going to want to listen to this podcast. These books are timely. We're dealing with COVID, a lot of loss, a lot of grieving, a lot of negativity. We need to be grateful and show gratitude. There's always something to be grateful for. And no, I'm not a Pollyanna by any means. Ask my mother. I was always negative. But I started to learn to be grateful, and it changed my life. I want to introduce my guest, who I met on Facebook, and I saw her books, and I just had to contact her. And I'm so glad I did because she was very inspirational. This woman, if she can say she's grateful, anybody can say they're grateful. You know, here on Chatting with Betsy, I talk about grieving. I talk about the taboo. I'm blowing the lid off of grieving. Let's talk about it. Stop hiding it underneath the rug and bring it out, and let's all talk about it. Because you know what? If everyone that's alive, we're going to die. That's a fact. So let's talk about the grieving instead of stifling it and suppressing it. And I want to welcome my guest, Kenisha Nichelle. Hi, Kenisha.
Hello. Hi, Betsy.
How are you today?
I am good. I'm good. I'm blessed to be on this side. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. I didn't say the name of your books because I want you to discuss what each book is, but can you please give the audience your background? Because your background, when I talked to you, I felt such a connection because you're just so inspiring, and I want you to tell the audience the loss that you suffered. And you lost both your parents at a young age, and I'd like you to share that with the audience.
Sure, no problem. So right now today I'm 34, and at the age of 12, I lost my father to a brain aneurysm. And it was hard. It was difficult. I was a daddy's girl growing up. Mind you, I'm also an only child. So to lose my father was extremely devastating to me. Fast forward, at the age of 21, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and after a 3-year battle, she passed away. And so here I was at the age of 21, a college student, and declared an orphan because I no longer had my parents with me. And so it has not been an easy journey the last 13 years. But when I reached year 10, which was 2017, I had a overwhelming feeling that life had to be a little different. And if you've experienced a major loss, you know when anniversaries and holidays and things come around, you can find yourself falling into a depressive state. And so at the 10-year mark, when the calendar turned July, I just was in a space where I wanted to do something different. I didn't want my mom's anniversary to come around, which is July 13th, to where I was doing the same thing over and over again. And so, I got very, very comfortable and crystal clear and asked God, I said, why did you allow me to go through this? Why did you take my parents from me at 21? I haven't experienced much of life, hadn't graduated college, married, kids. I hadn't done anything. And so I just wanted to know why. And I felt that he told me clear as day that I put you through this early enough so that you would be in the position to help others. I did not know that this pandemic would come around the corner and would lead me to this space where I am actually have overcome the grief and now in a position to talk about it openly and honestly. But I do feel that he put me through it way back then to prepare me for now. And so in this moment, in the midst of this pandemic and COVID-19 and all the lives that have been lost, I just felt like, okay, what can I do with my testimony of coming through the season that are so many people are going through right now? And, the one thing that I wanted to do is I know I wanted to be a speaker, and I know that I want to, get on the stage or in this virtual world, get behind the camera and, share my journey. But what is something tangible that people can start using now to help them with the healing process? It's not something that happens overnight. It definitely takes time, but there needs to be a starting point. And so just reflecting back on the things that I use, the resources and the tools, one major component being art therapy, I decided, okay, well, why don't I create a affirmation coloring book plus a journal combo that would help start the healing process. And so for anyone that is grieving, that book is Mending Broken Pieces, Coloring Affirmations and Journaling for Healing Through Grief. And so the book contains affirmations where you can just color and make the pictures pretty and, just recite those affirmations to yourself, help them to get down into your subconscious mind that even though you may not be feeling these things right now, the fact that you are reciting them and repeating them is going to help take root into your life. And then journal prompts that will help you with unpacking and releasing those feelings and emotions that you're holding deep inside. Because I'm sure there's other people like myself, it's sometimes difficult talking about the things that you're going through and how you're feeling, especially if you're that quote-unquote strong friend. And so you need a way to release all of that stuff that you're holding inside. So putting pen to paper and just letting the pen write and you just get out every single thought and feeling is to help you start the process. Not necessarily the end-all, be-all, but a way to get started with your healing journey. And so I have that book, and then if you're not grieving, if you haven't experienced a traumatic loss, but, you still understand the power of affirmations and being grateful and thankful for the good things that you've had in your life and you want to manifest more, then there's a second book, I Choose Me, an affirmation coloring book and gratitude journal that will help. And so it's along the same concept, but, the affirmations have changed and the prompts have changed where it's more towards being thankful and grateful for what you have so you can manifest more.
That is great. I just love it. Kanisha, for people who don't know, what is an affirmation and why is it important to have them?
So affirmations are short sentences that you can recite and repeat over and over. More times than not, they are I am statements. So, I am wonderful. I am blessed. I am happy and healthy. Repeating these out into the universe is making a bold declaration that, like I said, even though you may not feel these things, these are the things that you want to call forth into your life. Today, I choose joy. I have a bright and prosperous future. Saying those things, even if it's hard to see, if you're in a rough situation right now, or if things are not going the way that you want them to go, then you are changing the trajectory of your life and the things that you want to see by simply calling forth those things. Even the Bible says is to call forth the things that are not as though they were. So even though you may not, have the money that you want, or, the healing may not have taken place in your life just yet, just training your mind to believe that it can happen can absolutely do wonders and to allow those things to manifest in your life.
Absolutely. I agree. Just a couple of years ago, I would think that that's all a bunch of baloney until I went to a summit. I did. I thought people were nuts. But when I went to a summit, and I've been pessimistic all my life, that's why I went. If people think I'm a Pollyanna, it's really funny because I'm not. I was pessimistic all my life until 2 years ago when I attended a summit. And then I decided I'm going to be grateful. I'm going to flip my beliefs. I'm going to start doing affirmations. It's something I have to work on every day. And this would be I Choose Me book, to gratitude. Mm-hmm. There's always something to be grateful for. And I told caregivers you can't control your situation, no matter who you're caregiving for.
Right.
Or if your loved one has, even if they don't have dementia, if they had a stroke or if they have cancer, something else, you can't control that, but you can control how you respond to the situation. And this is what people had to realize, and I know I had to realize that. I really did. I mean, it took a long time for the light to go on. But
that's what they say. It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think it was Dr. Dyer that said something to the effect of, when you look at things differently, things change, something to that effect. I forgot the exact quote. And it's true. And is it easy to be grateful when everything is falling apart around you? No, but I always say you have to thank God, for the small things, or whoever, people choose to believe in. Excuse me.
Yeah, and you definitely have to. Definitely have to.
Can you show me? Oh, excuse me. I want to ask you a question, because people don't understand it unless they've gone through it. You lost your father suddenly, and you knew your mom, had cancer, so you kind of, expected that. And I know they both are not good, and you were younger when you lost your dad, but I tell people, when someone loses someone suddenly, they have to deal with that trauma, the shock, and then I think it's worse when it's a sudden death. How do you feel about that? Because you experienced both.
I would agree. So when my father had an aneurysm, it was on a Wednesday. He was a police officer, and so he was in the middle of annual training. And so he was at this training class and literally just collapsed in the middle of lunch on a Wednesday, and was pronounced brain dead and passed away on Saturday. So I had no time really to even understand what was going on. I mean, I'm a child, so I had no idea what was going on. And even though my parents were divorced, I chose to live with my father. So after, he passed away, I'm coming back to a house that's completely empty. And so it was hard. That was actually the very first time that I attempted suicide. I thought that, my daddy was my world. That's my king. That's my, my everything. And I just didn't feel like I could go on with life without my father not being here. And so it puts you in a really, really, really bad place, Just trying to recall back to that time. I do know that I attended children's grief counseling, and that's actually the first place where I started with art therapy, because they do that more so with children, so you can try to process those thoughts and feelings. But it was completely a shock. I mean, shock to everyone, but to myself in particular, because it's literally, he was here one day and he was gone the next.
Yes, you don't have that closure of saying goodbye and saying, I love you. And as a young 12-year-old, it's hard for an adult to deal with. But as a 12-year-old, that's very young. And I know children lose their parents, at any age. Were you allowed to grieve and show your feelings? Or did you have to suppress it because people didn't want to talk about it? Because seems to be a really huge problem I'm finding with grieving.
I was told to suppress it, and I do believe that's probably why I chose, for whatever reason, and I can chuckle about it now, but it's the reason why I chose to get a butter knife to try to slit my wrist. It's because I really couldn't talk about it. My grandparents, my father's parents, they were still living, and they had their own process, but I was literally made to go back to school the following week. Like I said, he passed away on a Saturday. I went back to school with the exception of the day of the funeral, which was a weekday. So I missed that, but I was thrown right back into life, if you will, as if, nothing had really happened. And so, I'm a kid. I'm trying to talk to my friends, and they have no clue what this is about. Even a couple of my friends came to the wake and to the funeral to support, but they didn't really know what they could do because they had never experienced this before. So I do believe it wasn't until I began to act out that my family was like, okay, something's not right. I think Kanisha is struggling with this, and perhaps we should, get her to talk to somebody. And so it wasn't until I tried to slit my wrist. I think my stepmother found the knife in my room and, began asking questions. And then that's when I started to go to therapy. But before then, not really. I do remember going back to school as if, well, your dad's gone, but life goes on, as that was the attitude.
Yes, that is the attitude, Kanisha, and it has to stop. And I'm doing a show, actually, on Saturdays with the CEO, Lillian Caldwell, of Passion World Talk Radio, about grieving. And grieving is messy. It's not, like I said, it's not neat, and you put it in a box and it goes on a shelf. Yes, life,
right.
Goes on. Yes, we know life goes on. Life is different, but it does go on. And I tell people, Kanisha, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way, when you stifle your grief, when you're not allowed to talk about it, when you won't acknowledge those feelings, it's only going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Oh,
and
sure.
It could cause, people to have mental breakdowns. And, well, this is another stigma. It'd be a whole other show. The stigma of mental health issues has to stop. People, I want to tell listeners, it's okay to go for help. If you're a man, woman, or child, if you need help, go for help. There is no shame. This has to stop. And if I have to come on here every time I do a show and say that, I will, because it has to stop. I know myself, I am going for grief counseling now. And you have 2 books about journaling. And one of the things, I went to a grief seminar, and they gave us a little journal. And they said, you should journal. Also, in the bereavement group of the hospice, they also said about journaling, but that was canceled due to the pandemic. And if you can't, afford, I just want to make this very clear to the viewers, and I don't know if this, is in, outside the U.S., because I don't know. In the U.S., I think in every town, we call it towns in New Jersey, whatever it's called where you all live, go to your senior center. If you are 60 and above, and maybe they even do it at 55, I don't know. It depends, I guess, on your town or your state. Call your senior center and ask if they give free counseling. Mine does. I found that out because I can't afford $90 a week for mental health counseling with my insurance. And go for the help. Some places offer a sliding scale fee based on what your income is. But go for help. Don't suffer alone. Get a book that Kanisha wrote and published, and do coloring, do journaling, and it can help you. And start doing affirmations. Flip your beliefs. If you don't think you're worthy, flip it around. Say, I am worthy. I am good enough. I'm not this, right? I got to tell myself that every day. It's a battle. It is a battle, and I just love what you did, and I love your honesty. And I tell people, I mean, you were young, your parents didn't have dementia, but children I know who see their parents suffer with any type of dementia, I call them the hidden casualties. of dementia. And if you're a child or you have children, no matter what the disease is, and they see their parent dying, and let's just be very blunt here, it hurts them. And I think they should let their children vent. Were you able to vent, Kanisha, with your mom? Did you have anyone to go to?
When my father passed, not necessarily. In all honesty, my mother and I's relationship was a little bit strained. When my father passed away, like I said, I lived with my dad. When they got a divorce, I chose to live with him. So, there was a little bit of strain there, but in the end, I ended up, moving with my mother and living with her until I left for college. And so just remembering back to that time, I didn't really have a whole lot of people to talk to. And that's what I said. That's again, is the reason why I began to act out, as most children will do. When you don't have a safe place to be yourself and just to talk and release and say whatever you want without judgment, then you begin to act out. Because think about it. You're holding toxicity within yourself. If you don't have a way to release that, then your behavior changes. You're going to start lashing out at people. If you don't get your way or you don't get something that you want, then you have an attitude. So all of it shows up in different ways. So it's imperative that if you're not going to have a safe space to talk about it in, then you at least need to have a journal or something that you can write it down in and get it out, because it's going to manifest in your life in other ways. I know I developed ulcers because I was holding in stress and I wasn't talking about things and releasing things. So all of that, you can have the mental part of it or the physical ramifications of not being able to release the things that you're feeling and holding inside.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Kanisha, and being honest, because the stress of holding in grief and your feelings will cause mental and physical changes. And it happens all the time. And this is why I say over and over again, parents, let your children vent to you. Do not judge your children. Let them vent to you, because you know what? If they don't vent to you, guess who they're going to go to? They're going to go out to the street, and you don't want them to do that. They could take drugs. Yep. They could get involved in gangs and do things that you don't want them to be doing. You don't want to cut that line of communication off.
Absolutely.
And I can't say that enough. I really can't. It's very, very important. Did anyone tell you, Kanisha, to be strong during the course of this?
Of course. Oh, my goodness. Oh, gosh. Now, this I can recall more with regards to my mother. So, of course, when she passed, my grandmother, who, she's still living, so my mom's mom, she was obviously having a tough time. And so, my mom obviously wasn't prepared to leave. So, none of her final arrangements or anything like that was done ahead of time. So, it was on us to go to the funeral home and process paperwork and get insurance and all the business that comes with, when a loved one passes away. So, of course, I'm trying to hold it together, but let's not be mistaken that I just lost my mother, and I was there at her bedside. So, that has its own piece of trauma to it. I chose to be there because I had a feeling, you could say maybe the Holy Spirit told me, but I knew the night of, so I chose to be there. But there's also a sense of trauma that comes with that when you are there at your loved one's bedside as they transition. So all of that together was a lot. And then, of course, family's like, well, you got to be strong for your grandmother. You got to be strong. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, that was my mother. What are you talking about? So, yeah, I got told all of that, and I still hear it to this day, and it's quite frankly annoying. But, oh, my gosh, if I were you, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I'm like, well, I didn't have a choice. Please don't think I signed up for this. Like, I did not volunteer to have this happen to me. So, but you figure it out, and you keep pushing. You do what you have to do to make the best of it. I obviously know that my life could have went a completely different route, but I am thankful that above all, even though we talk about counseling and therapy, that my life has been rooted in faith, and so when it boils down to it, I was able to come back to that place. Was I there in the beginning? No, I didn't want to hear anything about that. I didn't care that she was going to be with God. She's supposed to be here with me. So, you go through all of that, but at the end of the day, whatever your foundation is, that's the point and the piece that's going to help you to navigate and to figure out this thing called life, even in their absence.
Yes. I found it very annoying also when people would tell me to be strong or tell my son to be strong. I cannot stand that. People listening, please do not, and I repeat, do not tell people to be strong, because everybody has a breaking point. We are all human beings, and how strong do you have to be? I mean, my son was very strong. I encourage my son to cry. I am proud that my son is compassionate, that he can go to a wake and tell me, Mom, I cried. I said, that's okay, Josh. It's okay. I never told my son to suck it up. I never told my son to be strong. I let him vent to me, and we have talked about the grieving process. And, when there's a rough anniversary day coming up, we talk about it. We acknowledge it. And that's what I feel that people need to do. I mean, everyone is different, but I just want to encourage people, please don't say that to people. I mean, let me tell you what, to be a caregiver, number one, that's a strength, okay? Watching your loved one transition is very difficult. It's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do.
Yep.
And, don't tell someone to be strong. Tears are not a sign of weakness.
Right.
They're a sign of strength. It's a sign of strength. It's not weak, okay? I grew up in the time, I'm 62, okay? So my dad was from the World War II era. You don't cry. You got to suck it up. You got to be tough. Not anymore. That thinking has changed. And if more boys were raised to be compassionate, to show compassion, it's okay to cry, I think the suicide rate would be down with teenagers and men that are police officers or veterans, because it should not be a shame to go for help or to shed a tear. And I just think, if whatever your faith is, let that give you strength. And it's a process. Grieving is a process, and it's different for everybody. And nobody should be judged at all, and especially children. I can't even imagine being 12 years old and just all of a sudden, losing a parent, and then, you lost your mom. You were young. You were in high school.
21.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's young. That's a lot to deal with. So I don't think anyone should judge anybody. And you know what? If people don't know what to say, I feel this way, Kanisha. If people don't know what to say to someone, I can tell you what not to say. Don't say, oh, I know how you feel, when you don't. Don't say be strong. Try saying, you know what, I love you. Cry on my shoulder. I'm here for you, to hug you. I have an ear. Do that. Do that, people that are listening, because you don't know what it's like unless you've experienced it. And then again, everyone is different. I appreciate you coming on, Kanisha. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience and if you could tell us how to purchase your books, where we can find them to buy.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I will leave you with this. Definitely take your time. It is a process. Not everyone's process is the same. I feel that my journey was a little bit longer simply because I was much younger. And so I had really no way of really understanding how all of this was supposed to occur. So my journey was 10 years, give or take. But that doesn't necessarily mean that yours is going to be 10 years as well. But what I can say is that you definitely have to take your time with it. Don't rush yourself with trying to re-enter into life. I know that's something that I did, and it extremely backfired on me. I had 1 month to process my mom's death before going back to school, and it didn't work out well. And so I would just encourage you to, find what works best for you. If that is these affirmations and coloring books, if that's going to therapy, if that's getting a change of scenery, that's one thing that I did. I enjoyed, getting out and walking, and then, at that time traveling. Obviously we can't travel now, but traveling to get a complete change of scenery is just something that helped with changing your perspective and giving yourself a better outlook on what life can be like. So, you could definitely follow me on social media. I give a lot of information and inspiration as far as motivation and how to get through the grief journey, sharing my testimony. So you can follow me on Instagram at Kenesha Nichelle. That's N as in Nancy Nichelle, Nichelle. And then my books can be found on my website, which is KeneshaNichelle.com. And then also, if you're looking to start your healing journey now, I do have a free resource, which is the I Will Live Again bundle. That includes affirmations, some journaling prompts, and some self-care tips. So if you're interested in getting started now, then you can visit IWillLiveAgain.com and download that for free.
That's great. And where can we buy your books?
Books, yeah, you can go to my website, which is KeneshaNichelle.com. Yep.
Oh, that is great. Thank you so much, Kenesha, for coming on and sharing your story, which is very heart-touching. I just love talking to you. I think you're very inspirational. And I want to thank you're welcome, listeners for listening. If you missed any of this podcast, I suggest you subscribe to my shows. They're for free on Spreaker, Spotify, CastBox, Google, iHeart, to name just a few. And that way you won't miss any of my shows. And be kind, and especially nowadays, get these books, or one or the other, and learn to start doing affirmations and to be grateful. Trust me, there is always something to be grateful for, and I can say that because I lost my husband in January. So I am very grateful that my husband went before this pandemic. That might sound awful to say, but it's the truth. And I am glad that I was there for him, and I'm glad that his journey made me a better person. And sometimes I think, Kenesha, you would agree, out of tragedy comes something beautiful. And you become, right? You become a better person. Sometimes you become the person you were meant to be. And instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, tell yourself, this is happening for me. What can I learn from this experience to help other people? And when you help others, you're helping yourself. So remember that.
For sure.
Reach out to other people. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, for this radio station and giving people an opportunity to speak. Just love up on someone, I might sound like a hippie, but I'm not. I was a little too young. But we need to show the love, okay? We need to show the love to our fellow human beings. So until we chat again, this is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy and Passion Wolf Talk Radio. Chat with you later. Bye-bye.